88, 89, and I was elected to the board in 89, so then I became the board's liaison. And Renee stepped down as the liaison and stepped off the Long Range Planning Committee and remained on the board. So that was one of my main duties. And then as Convention 90 and 91 came about, they asked me if I would update the manual and get it, and so then I spent a lot of time on that.
Now, Convention 91 was held in Detroit.
Right. So that was first-hand experience.
And you were
the secretary of the CPC, the Convention Planning Committee. Tim West was the chairman. We didn't have co-chairs. We just decided Tim was strong enough to do it himself, you know. So I was the secretary.
What do you remember about that experience?
Oh, it was good. We really had a very, very good Convention Planning Committee in the sense that we really were in this together. And we had very, very, very few arguments. Tim was a very strong leader. He was very adamant in what he expected us to do. We raised a lot of money because we wanted to subsidize the convention so that we weren't taking all the money from the registration, in the sense that we had to raise registration so high to do things for the convention, then we wouldn't have any conventioneers. So we subsidized. We raised over $6,000 at our chapter. And then in turn, when the convention was over with, we took that $6,000, which I'm not quite sure, I think it was under $6,000 that was left. It was, I think, around $5,000. Anyways, we divided it. The chapter kept half, and the other half was donated to the national. But it was a good learning experience. I had done some other organizational type work, but it was just that the committees, they did their work. All I had to do was basically get the minutes together and take notes and minutes. And Tim was fastidious enough that he wrote the letters. He wanted them written his way, and so he just did the letter writing himself. And that was great because it took less, it was less on me. So that was nice. But it was good. We worked well together.
Now, you were part of the entertainment for that convention, weren't
Yes,
you?
I was. We didn't know what to do. We really didn't. We didn't know what to do for the banquet. And we did some, Paul Sears, he did his, looking around, trying to find some kind of entertainment for, what are we going to, who we going to, what, how. And I had been working on, for my own pleasure, I had been working on Rhapsody in Blue, something that I always wanted to play, just something I always wanted to learn how to play. And so I was messing around with it. I mean, really, really putting some time into it and working on it. Not to play at the banquet, not to even play at convention in that sense. I thought maybe one of the afternoons or something like that might be able to play some songs or something just for entertainment, just for fun for the group. And Matt Downing heard me play, asked me to play it at my house, and he says, "Oh no, this is banquet material." And I said, no, it isn't, And so he went to the CPC and said, "I found our entertainment." And so.
And it was great.
Well, thank you. I was quite honored to play for the group, and was quite taken by the standing ovation that I received. I didn't expect that. I mean, not that I didn't expect applause. I just didn't expect that.
Now you were still on the NA board at this time, is that right?
That's right. I was a board of directors.
And at some point thereafter, you became co-chair. How did that happen?
Out of the clear blue, or not really out of the clear blue, but anyways, Mike Warner resigned his position as national co-chair, and Bob Williams went looking for a replacement. And in, I guess it was January, because it was for the winter board meeting, I accepted Bob's request.
January of '92?
Yes, January of '92. Thank you. That the board had approved me as being appointed to replace Mike Warner for that interim time, and that's all I planned on doing at that time.
So you were co-chair with Bob Williams.
Yes.
And you remained in that position.
Well, till the term was up in '92 in the Dallas Convention, that was the election for new co-chairs. and then Bob and I ran again.
And so you served until the '94 convention?
Yes, yes.
Well, what was that like? What was it like being co-chair?
That was like being damned if you do and damned if you don't. I enjoyed it. It was difficult in some ways because you can't please everyone, and then expectations, other people's expectations of what you're going to do or what you're going to be about. I know that a lot of the guys wanted somebody more radical, somebody far more out than I was, and so that was, I could, you know, it wasn't always an easy situation to handle when you came to the public events. You know, to run a board meeting, it's just another meeting. You know, it's a board meeting. I mean, the guys are, you know, you're dealing with more leaders, but it's still another meeting, and it's parliamentarian, and that's easy. That's the easy job. It was the being politically correct, being out in the open, being visual, being visible, being NABWT on the forefront, and it was, I'm not out enough for the organization. That's how I felt about it, and it was just something that I didn't feel I could go too much further than what I did. I enjoyed the position. I enjoyed the 2 years. I seriously considered running in '94, but between my home life and work and my relationship with Robert, I just felt that 5 years on the board was long enough, and I felt that it was time to step down.
What was it like being in a position where you were a co-leader? I mean, how did that work? Having a co-chair who obviously lived in a different
That was the
community.
hard part. That was the hard part, because the fact that we were living in different areas. Because having a partner to work with, like the co-chairs in the chapter, that was great. Because I mean, you pick up the phone, you drive over to the other person's house, you have this partner to kick off ideas, to talk about, to shoot them off the wall, and you know, you got a second head to sit there and say, no, that's not quite right, we need to relook at this, or that's a great idea, let's try it, let's run with it, let's see what happens. With Bob and I, we had that kind of communication, but the problem was it was so long distance, him in D.C. and me in Detroit, and so it wasn't always easy to just kick things around, so we didn't communicate as often as probably we should have, in the sense of what you would have done if we were both in the same city, where it was, you know, a real local mutual. But I enjoyed it. I mean, it was nice. It's always nice because you're not carrying all the weight. You're not taking all the heat. If something goes wrong, you have somebody to turn to and say, okay, how do we fix this? Or what's the best way to deal with this situation now? Rather than you're standing on your own 2 feet looking at the world by yourself saying, well, this is it. So you know, Bob and I didn't always agree on everything, but basically it was a good 2.5 years of working with Bob, and I think that we did some good things for the organization.
What were some of the major developments that you recall during your tenure?
Well, one of the things was, of course, the National Task Force on AIDS Prevention. Them leaving us, and the tail wagging the dog, as we were discussed them so many times. I hated to see it happen, and when I was a director, I spoke in the San Francisco board meeting vehemently of us having the NTFAP stay with us, that we would do a better job, we need to do a better job of handling their requests for the grants that come in so quickly and we don't meet often enough, and so on and so on and so forth. I was a firm believer in keeping that with the organization in 1990. By 1992, those 2 years, and seeing what took place and what their needs were and what we were doing and what was feasible for us to do, I saw that it was really necessary for them to leave. It was an amicable separation, or at least I like to think it was, and I think it was necessary for them. It was unfortunate for us. We were the losers on that aspect, that we lost a very important part of our legitimacy as an organization. But we couldn't meet their demands of approving their grants and the things that they were trying to do. We didn't meet often enough, and so it was good for them, and that in a sense is good because they got to move on, they got to grow, they got to do what they needed to do and take care of their business. That was one of the things.
Now, when you were co-chair, I think was the time that we first began thinking of an office or having an office? Is that-
We had the office already in Chicago. I don't remember if it was called the Rotary Center or not, but it was a very nice building on the second or third floor, and we were renting a space in Chicago. No, we got that in, I could be wrong, I believe in 90, because we were on the, I believe I was on the board. I remember we sent out information to all the chapters of 3 locations for the national office. DC, Chicago, and it was either LA or San Francisco that we wanted to have, and Chicago received the vote. They won. By a small margin, they won. So the office was put in Chicago. And I visited, when I became co-chair, I went and visited the office. Ken Allen was our national treasurer, and he also worked in the office. And so Ron Trosper, our recording secretary, and I flew to Chicago and visited and saw all the workings and everything, and so on and so forth. And so I knew firsthand what the national, as national co-chair, I should know what the office looks like, how it's run, and what's there. And so we went, and that was May of '92, Memorial Weekend, '92. Ron and I went there, and it was a great little office. It was a nice place.
And Ken Allen was...
He was our national treasurer and vice president of the Rotary Center. And we shared an office space, rental space with the Chicago chapter.
And then at some point we hired an
Right.
employee or
We
a
hired an
worker.
employee, and that was Ed Fleming.
Uh-huh.
And I don't really remember exactly when Ed was hired. He wasn't working in the office in '92 of May. At least I don't remember him being there. And so it was probably that summer that we hired him. And then in '93, it was either the fall of '92 or the winter of '93, they moved to a new building. They bought their own building in Chicago, the Rotary Center, because they were renting space at that time. And they started renovating an old building in Chicago, and the office was moved there.
And then what happened to our office?
Well, our office went there, and then we had to negotiate a new contract with the new Rotary Center. And the board asked me if I could negotiate with the vice president of the Rotary Center, which I said, well, I can negotiate with anybody. But our vice president, the vice president of the Rotary Center, was our outgoing national treasurer, Ken Allen, which is a conflict of interest. And the board asked Ken, could you negotiate in good faith with our organization? And Ken said, of course. He said, of course. And so Ken and I sat on the phone 3 different times, and we negotiated a contract. And it was an unsatisfactory negotiation. Ken knew the motion that was made by Renee of how much money we were going to spend for rent. Ken knew what our money was. Ken knew, and I'm not trying to dog Ken. Ken and I were great friends. But Ken knew too much of NA business to negotiate, to sit there on the blind side and say, well, this is what the Rotary Center needs, and I can sit there and say, well, this is what the NA needs. But he knew what the NA had. So it just really went bad. The rent was stuck at $200 a month because the motion said not to exceed $200 a month. But then along with that came, well, you need rental space. Storage space, and you have to rent that. And it went to, and there was all these add-ons that I knew that when Renee made that motion, the motion was not meant with that. That was not the intent that we spend no more than $200 a month, period. That was the intent of the motion. Ken took it literally that it was we were going to pay no more than $200 a month for rent. So anyways, Ken and I bantered back 3 conversations, 3 different times, because I just said, this is not satisfactory, Ken, no, I'm not signing it, I refuse, I'm looking out for the best interest of the NA, I don't care what anybody thinks, says, or does, this is not right. And Ken, okay, well, we'll talk later, we'll get back, let me go back to the Rotary Center, board, and I'll talk to them and see what we can do, and we kept coming, and it was just the same old thing. And so, I finally said, okay, and I called up Bob. Each time I would always call Bob up, Bob Williams, the other co-chair, and share with him the conversation that Ken and I had. And so the last time I said, look, this is not going anywhere, this is not going to happen. And so Bob and I talked about it, so then put a letter together, and I sent it out to the directors saying that this is not going to happen, this is not what it should be. Ken was I got beat up by this from some folks, especially in Chicago. They were not appreciative of me. Ken would deliberately, and everybody I think they took it that I was saying that Ken would have dementia, that his mind wasn't focused, he couldn't stay on a thought. Ken would, as I'm trying to whittle him down on something, price-wise, Ken would change the subject. He would just go on and talk about something completely different. I mean, you shrewd little bugger. He knew exactly what he was doing. He did not want to give what I was asking for. He would change the subject. That man did not have dementia. He was not losing his mind. He was a shrewd negotiator. And so, and I stated in the letter to the board that he would change the subject on it. And I think, I personally think, by the way the way I got beat up by the letter, that people thought I was talking that Ken was slipping. Ken was sharp. I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing. So, and negotiations did not go well. So, like I said, the letter went to the board. The board voted to go ahead and move the office. So then I had
To
D.C. And I had some people looking for an office in D.C. They found us an office, which was the office that we ended up in
on Connecticut Ave.
Thank you. You think I'd remember that? And so we went to, my friend and I, we went to Chicago. We rented a van, and we loaded up not a van, a trailer, and we loaded up everything and brought it to Detroit, and Bob picked it up from Detroit and took it to D.C.
That was part of your co-chair duties?
Well,
Moving?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
so. It was not a, I know it did not go well, but it was a necessary evil. It just was, it was necessary. Had we not moved it when we did, I did learn that they padlocked the Rotary Center that following November. And the Chicago, I don't know, I never did ask, because it was a sensitive subject, but I know that their materials, the Chicago chapter's materials, were padlocked in the Rotary Center. I don't know if they ever got them out. I don't know whatever happened. I never inquired any further than that. So, and that's
But you took our materials and you kept them in your
my
house,
home.
I believe.
They were in my home for a few weeks. Well, let me say it this way. Some materials were in my home for a few weeks. Bob picked them up and then took them to D.C. The things that were archival, they stayed in my home for probably 9 months. And then Homer Adams came as Speaker of the House. He came the following spring, I think it was Easter week, and he went through the archives while I was at work. And then I would come home and sort through what he pulled out, and we kind of looked them over together and decided what should be kept and what was not.
Well, now that you participated in the move to D.C., did you have any further role in setting up the office or the hiring of the employee?
We set up a committee where 5 people in the D.C. area interviewed. Oh, geez. Well, Homer was on. He was the only one that wasn't in the D.C. area, I guess. It was a couple board of directors, Homer, and 2 outsiders, people that they knew in D.C. that they felt would have been good for the interviews. They interviewed over 30 people. And then out of the 30 people, there was supposed to have been 5 people that Bob and I would then interview as the final the selection. The committee recommended these top 5, and we were to interview those 5 people. I saw 1 of the 5, and the other 4, for whatever reasons, never showed, were never brought to the interviewing session when I flew to D.C. to do the interviews. I interviewed 1 and 1 other person that was not of the top 5. The other person that was not of the top 5 was certainly not, at this point, what we were looking for. And the one person that was of the top 5, I was all for him. I think did an excellent interview, and I thought he would have been a great asset to the organization. For reasons to me that are truly unknown, and I'll say it this way, he refused the position after he was offered the position. Bob had contacted him and said, the position is yours, and he refused it. You know, said that he didn't like the way the interview went. That was what I was told. When I asked if I could call the young man and talk to him, I was told, no, he doesn't want to hear from us. So I left it alone. You know, if that's the truth, then that's the truth, and I left it alone. So in subsequent, that was in May, and then of 93. And then at the Chicago, no, that was San Diego board meeting. That would have been February of 93. Bob told us that Troy refused the position. And then in May, we interviewed Will Brennan for the position, and it was over the phone. We did a conference interview over the phone. And he was the only person that I interviewed with Bob over the phone. And he was good. I mean, after the interview was over with and Will hung up and Bob and I talked afterwards, I was very impressed with Will. I thought he interviewed extremely well. And I thought he was going to be a real asset for our organization. I really did. I thought I was very, very, very impressed with his answers. Mm-hmm. The skills that he says he was bringing to us. And so I thought we were really going to have something. I thought we were, and that was I thought was a real feather in our cap as a board over those couple years, was that we actually had a real office. Not that we didn't have one in the Rhodey Center, but a national office in D.C. with an executive director or an employee that was going to really just move us forward and free us from all the mundane chores of running an office and an organization, that we can move on and take care of the other things that needed personal hands-on. And of course that was, was it 93? Anyway, I'm not sure.
And
I don't.
What happened?
Will just didn't. He just didn't rise to the occasion. Either he's just one of those people that interviewed extremely well, and some people do. I know I've done that. I've interviewed a number of teachers for positions at my school I worked at, and it's just, you interview them and think, my God, they're just going to be incredible. And then you start really picking apart the interview, because there's a couple of us, there's 3 of us that are in the interview. And you start, after they leave, you start kind of looking, and then you start realizing, no, this person is not, but they just, so I don't know, Will just, I think he had his own agenda, and I don't think he was as dedicated to ours as we were hoping he would be.
Were there any other accomplishments or frustrations of your term as co-chair that you recall?
Not really. I mean, like I said, meetings are meetings, and people get out of order, and you have to slap their hand a little bit, per se, and move things along. But I think my thing really is that my biggest frustration probably is, and always will be, as long as I'm employed in a school situation, is that I keep my personal life a little more private than what I'd like to. I like to be a little more open than what I am. I mean, I pretty much go where I want to go and do what I want to do, but it's, as for an organization, as a national co-chair, I felt that there was more I could have done, but at the same time I know that my hands were tied. I tied my own hands, and so that I wasn't going to be able to. So I left in '94 feeling like I could have done more. I should have done more. But knowing that even if I'd stayed if I'd been reelected, I ran and was reelected, I don't know if that would have happened.
Left the board in '94, and I gather since then your connection to the NA has been mainly by attending conventions.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you have any particular memories of conventions or board meetings or things that really stand out in your mind, events, just maybe funny things that happened, unusual things, anything that sticks out in your mind from particular years? We could go year by year, convention by convention.
There's so many. Well, I mean, Boston, I think it was I was just overwhelmed by everything, that year. It was just so, it was so overwhelming. The organization, just everything that was there. But I think that, of course, the trip to the museum, the Ramesses exhibit was just, that was, and that had nothing to do with the organization, but it was just, that was such a, I would have never, I'm fascinated with Egyptology, so I don't know, it's got, it's, I think the thing that it's the friendships, it's the meeting of the people, all the big hooplas and events and those. I don't mean to say I take them for granted, but they're nice. I enjoy them. But I think more than anything, I think it's when you meet somebody that you click with, and you bond and you make a real friendship, that you know that if it hadn't been for this organization, I would have never met you. You live in L.A., I live in Detroit, I would have never met you. All the times I'd have gone to L.A., if I ever would have gone to L.A., on like a vacation or something like that, how would we have met? It's just, and so I think more than anything, it's the people, for me, that, I'm more impressed with that, with the people, just good people.
Would you say that's what you like best about the organization?
Yes, yes. I mean, it's nice that, our statement of purpose is wonderful. I think it's a little too broad, but it's a wonderful statement. I think it's by being so broad, it's hard to really accomplish anything major within that because it is so broad. But the people that it brings to the table, it's great. I enjoy the people.
What do you like least about it?
The organization. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I think sometimes the apathy, the lack of movement. There's times when you look at it, and maybe the organization will never move great strides because of our mission statement that is so broad. And then that may not have anything to do with it at all. Maybe that's, we use that as an excuse not to go anywhere. But it's just sometimes the thing I think I like least about the organization is that is that everybody comes together, they have a wonderful time, but yet the support, the real support that you need for an organization to move isn't always there by the numbers that we have. We have far more people than we have such a large organization. We should have better support from the grassroots up. And it's just, I don't think it's there. I'm not saying there's not support there. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying for the large number that we have that belong to this organization nationwide, I think the support should be better than what it is because we are so large.
What do you think is our greatest accomplishment? What do you think is the ANA's greatest accomplishment?
One, I think the fact that we've been around for 20 years. I know that sounds silly, but so many people I know in Detroit, when we pulled our chapter together, we had a person that sat in a number of meetings. This is never going to work. This is never going to last. You are not going to get black and white people to sit down at the same table and agree. They were just adamant about it, that this was just, So I think just the fact that we've existed and we have functioned and we have done some wonderful things, but I mean that we have survived 20 years as an organization, as a national organization, that the national itself, that the chapters would support it and everything. So I'm saying there is support there, but I think that is just that alone is a wonderful task. Go ahead.
How have you seen AIDS affect this organization?
It's taken a lot of good people. It has taken a lot of good leaders. It has just emotionally drained everyone because of the loss or just the finding out of somebody else who is now HIV positive, which is, you know, which is wonderful in the sense that this organization has never shunned anybody. I mean, it's always been so open-armed and supportive, but it's that drainage of knowing there is another person, another good friend who now has this virus. It is just, it is, I think that, well, like anything, but if AIDS had never existed, this organization probably would be much further than what it is, because we would not have had to deal with that issue at all. We could have dealt with the racism and the homophobia and such, that we would not have had to deal with that. And AIDS has just taken so much from us. It's just, it's heartbreaking. It really is.
How have you seen race relations change, if you have, since you've been in this organization?
Oh, you know, that's, you mean within the organization or outside viewing it, or just in general? Just
Anything.
any way because within the organization, I think it's always been, you know, that's the reason why so many people are here, is because this is a place where you can sit amongst people of different backgrounds, origins, race, nationality, and so on, and just, it's family. You know, there's no division. It's family. It's you know, I know we don't always agree on things, but it's still family. What family does. I think outwardly, it's funny when you're in a city like here we are in San Francisco. You know, in a group of usually black and white men come walking in together in such large numbers. I mean, even if it's just 6 or 7 of you. But I mean, in any large number where you have almost an equal amount of the two major races that we have in our organization, black or white, that they come into a restaurant, they come into a store, and people just kind of like, oh, what, you know, so that it is a visual, and we're still opening eyes. I guess, you know, which is, I think is really great in that sense. I have not heard the derogatory terms, in which one of the reasons why I came to BWT in Detroit was that I was dating interracially at the time before '81, and some of my so-called friends who are no longer my friends, I would get derogatory remarks about who I was dating, and that was, you know, see ya, don't need to hear it. And so that's what's nice about this organization. Almost all my friends are in this organization or are like me. They date interracially of one way or another. It doesn't matter what race it is, whether it's Asian, Native American, or African American, or whatever, but they date, or they're most acceptant of interdating. So I don't deal with that.
What's your happiest recollection in this organization? If you have one.
That's a hard one. I don't know.
Do you have a saddest recollection? Saddest thing?
Not really. I mean, it's happiest is when I see somebody that I haven't seen in a long time. You come to a convention or a regional or an anniversary, and there's somebody you haven't seen in such a long time, and it's just like, oh my God, you know, there you are, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you run and you hug and you hold each other, and you just, I mean, that's just, and I think probably the saddest when somebody near and dear, you know, one of the saddest things I think is when Don Moses disappeared, and then when they found his body. That was, that broke my heart.
Mm.
That really did. I wanted so badly. You know, he didn't die. He disappeared. And I wanted, Robert and I used to talk all the time about going down to Youngstown and just go looking for him.
Mm.
And we would talk to some of the people down there and say, you know, have you found him yet? What's going on? Is there a search crew out there looking for him? You know, what's going on? You know, well, we've looked, so we don't know where. And, you know, and that was one of the most heartbreaking, that probably is the most heartbreaking. I've lost a number of friends inside the organization and outside the organization to AIDS. And I don't want to say you get used to it, but it's just, you know they have the virus and you know it's coming. It's just a matter of when. with Don, it was that, you know, you knew he was ill, but then he just disappeared, and it was just this unknowing, and that just broke my heart. It just, as he was such a wonderful person. I mean, always had a door open, always had a smile on his face, and the hospitality was just extraordinary. And good organizer, good worker, you could count on him. If he said he'd be here at 10, it was 10 o'clock there, he was standing. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better person. I mean, the man was just super. I know he wasn't a saint, but he was just super. You know, he was just, and I just, to have him disappear like that, it just was like, no, not to him. So that was hard for me.
Well, what do you think is the future of the NABWT?
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about that.
Does it have a future?
I think so. I think so. But it's what I was talking about earlier, about the commitment and about the support, that everybody wants to know what the NA is doing for the organization, but, you know, it can't stand alone. I mean, who is the NA? The NA is the local chapters. Where are they? What are they doing? How are they supporting? I mean, you know, where is their commitment to the organization? You know, and if they like coming to conventions and partying, well, I mean, it's, you know, what do? We just dissolve the NA and just every year try to figure out who's going to do the next party? I really believe there's a need for us nationally. We're the only organization that really talks about, you know, multicultural aspects of our country, which it is. So it's kind of hard to sit there and say we have no future when there actually is a desperate need for us. It's just a matter of the younger people, and I mean younger, I mean just newer to the organization. Are they going to pick up the slack? Are they going to grab that wheel? Are they going to take a hold of it and start doing the work that needs to be done? I think there's still a whole lot we can still do.
Well, is there anything you would like to add at the end of this interview?
I hope I didn't step on any toes. I really do mean that. I hope I didn't step on any toes, and I just wish the best for everybody. And I do love this organization. Whether I've been at the national level or the local level, I've been around with this organization basically for 19 and a half years, and it's hard to believe that I've been committed to this organization that long, locally and then nationally, that you're a part of it. Of course, if there's anything I can do, I'm always in Detroit, at least until I retire.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.